Holy City Center Radio. This is episode 330, and I am your host, Christian Sanger. Today is Friday, January 17th, 2025. Hello, all you saints and sinners out there in the Holy City and beyond. It is Friday. I hope you have an amazing weekend ahead of you. If you need any plans, you know what to do. holycitycenter.com/calendar. You can find all manner of things that are going on in town, in the neighboring areas. And also, if you have a chance this weekend, please vote. I should say nominate. Nomination period is open, not the voting period yet. That will be later. But please nominate Holy City Center for whatever categories you believe it fits in the Charleston City Paper's Best of Charleston Awards. There is a link in the show notes that will let you know which categories HCS may fit into, and also the link to where to go vote itself. We got a big show today, lots to talk about, big news, some drama. You won't be surprised who is behind the drama. So let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the latest headlines. We finally have answers in that bizarre accounting fiasco involving the state, where they found a mysterious account with $1.8 billion in it and had no idea what it was, where the money came from, nothing. They knew nothing about it. And although we have answers, it's still bizarre and is still a little fishy. So that $1.8 billion that was found in a state bank account last year has been deemed to not exist. That is according to Governor Henry McMaster. He announced that on Wednesday through a press release, and he's making that based on seeing a report from this group called Alex Partners. They were an outside firm that the state hired to, do some like forensic accounting work and figure out what the heck happened. And so, yes, they released that final report on their state treasury forensic auditing review. We talked about how they asked for an extension. It was originally due, I think, on December 31st. They said, we're going to need some more time. And Wednesday was finally when they were able to submit it. So what happened? According to Governor McMaster's release, quote, unintended accounting mistakes made by different parties involved in a state government's transition from an old accounting system to the new accounting system, end quote, is what caused this issue. So yes, back in last year, March, the state comptroller's general's office discovered and reported that nearly $1.9 billion was found in a bank account that appeared to be slowly collecting money over the span of several years. The report ended up showing that this whole issue dates back as far as 2007. At the time, and meaning back in March of last year, lawmakers expressed all manner of frustration, specifically with State Treasurer Curtis Loftus. At one point, one of his fellow Republicans, a senator, Larry Grooms, even said that he, quote, breached the public trust, end quote. So this was a bipartisan, agreement that the Treasurer's office messed up. And I'll have, what possible next steps are regarding Loftus here in a moment. All right, so the report, this is where it gets confusing. If you're an accounting person, if you know anything about this stuff, good for you. It's very confusing to, I think, a lot of people, myself included, especially because you're talking about, different systems and ways to go about business. So this can be a little cloudy, but I'll do my best to go over what the report said. So the report says that $1.8 billion represents the efforts of Loftus's office trying to balance the bank general ledger accounts in a new accounting system to the cash balances in individual banks. The new accounting system is SCEIS. If you're interested, maybe you are in a business that uses it. I have no idea. But in any event, the state treasurer's office planned to record entries into their new accounting system into two separate funds to make the balances match those in the individual accounts before netting the state's historical bank transaction from the old accounting system known as STARS against those two funds' entries. Alex Partners said the intent was for the sum of the cash balances in those funds to be zero at the end of the bank conversion. However, the conversion did not go as intended, and the fund ultimately accumulated and still reflects that $1.8 billion cash balance. They concluded that through incorrect journal entries made during the second part of the treasurer's office conversion plan, around 1.6 billion of that 1.8 billion is not actually cash, meaning it cannot be spent or appropriated by the state. The report said that that remaining $200 million is not excess cash and was included in the cash balance submitted by Loftus's office belonging to the state's general fund. If you followed all that, good for you. But basically, my understanding is when they're switching systems, apparently they were using different platforms and different ways to try to maneuver the money into these new accounts and make everything match up. And so they created kind of these like holding accounts, I guess, for lack of a better term. And in any event, all of that got very confused, and that money doesn't actually exist. And that little, and I say little very liberally here, because $200 million is not little, but in comparison to the $1 billion, in a state budget, actually belongs in the state's general fund. So they don't have anywhere. They don't have the $1.8 billion in actual cash anywhere. It's not real. It was an accounting mistake. Is the easiest way I can think to explain it. So, still questions, how could something this crazy happen? What do you mean there's an account that's reflecting this money, but the money doesn't exist? It's all very confusing and bizarre. And regardless, it's a big mistake. And so, what could happen next to Loftus? It's unclear. But today, just before I started recording, State Representative Heather Bauer filed articles of impeachment against the treasurer, and obviously it's regarding this error that was made. So. Introducing articles of impeachment doesn't really mean too much because it could easily, go nowhere from here. But that's the first step. So as there are updates about, possible impeachment for Loftus, I will certainly keep you updated on future episodes. You remember that young lady? I mean, she's probably in her late 20s, 30s at this point, I would think. I forget when she was on some talk show. It was the Cash Me Outside girl. The girl who, I don't know, I don't even remember the episode. I think it's like, problem children, parents can't control or whatever. And she just went off on a rant. People I think in the audience, how talk shows were like Maury or Jerry Springer or whatever, people like shout in the audience. And she started yelling at people saying that cash, she said cash, like catch me outside, but it came out as cash me outside. How about that? Well, Nancy Mace did her best impression of that young lady this week. Of course, Nancy Mace is a, I don't know, 47-year-old woman, so a little bit more embarrassing for her. She got into a little spat with Representative Jasmine Crockett, who is a Democrat from Texas. They got into a pretty heated exchange. I mean, really, it was one-sided, but we'll get to that in a moment. So they got into this heated exchange at a House hearing on Tuesday that ended with Mace challenging Crockett by asking whether she wanted to take it outside. So the war of words came up during a discussion about civil rights and transgender rights, with Crockett calling for reestablishing a subcommittee on civil rights and criticizing Mace's rhetoric about transgender people. Crockett said, quote, I can see that somebody's campaign coffers really are struggling right now. So she, talking about Mace, is going to keep saying trans, 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 trans so that people will feel threatened. And child, listen, end quote. And she kind of like went to continue on from there, but Nancy Mace interrupted her. Now, just like the cash me outside is a slang, most people know child is a slang. Chile would probably be the spelling of it. They're not really legitimately calling someone a child. It's just slang. But Nancy Mace either didn't know that or didn't care and just lost her mind. Interrupts what Crockett is saying very loudly. I mean, basically yelling, even though they all have microphones at these hearings, saying, I am no child. Do not call me a child. I am no child. She then said something about, I've broken more glass ceilings than you ever will. I'm a 46-year-old woman. I'm not a child, yada, yada, yada. And then ended it with, if you want to take it outside, we can do that. Now, everybody, even if you don't know other slangs that I've mentioned, everybody knows the phrase, we can take this outside, or let's take this outside, whatever context. The whole take it outside thing is clearly saying, let's go outside and fight. Everybody knows that. This is not a new slang. This is not new terminology. This is generations and generations of Americans, especially, that know that when you say something like that, it means you want to fight. Now, does Nancy Mace literally want to go out and fight? No, probably not. And I wouldn't want to fight Jasmine Crockett if I was Nancy Mace, because that's not a fight you're going to win. Um, whether it's an actual physical fight or a fight of wits, Jasmine Crockett's going to win. Regardless of if Mace actually meant it or not, that's what that means, and everybody knows that. She had a completely childish, which is funny. It's ironic that she had a childish response to what she thought was being called a child, and she goes ahead and confirms that again, even though she wasn't literally calling her child, but with her behavior, just completely confirms that, as she just loses her ever loving mind, and then says, "Let's take it outside," threatening violence. Now, I'm not one of those people who's clutching my pearls over this. Like I said, I don't think she actually meant it. I don't actually think Mace is going to assault Jasmine Crockett in any way, shape, or form. So I'm not like, oh my goodness, but that's what that phrase means. And Representative Maxwell Frost, a Democrat from Florida, tried to defend Crockett, saying that Mace had incited violence against her. Now, again, I don't think Mace would actually do anything, but yeah, that's what that phrase means. And after some discussion, James Comer, who heads the committee, ruled that Mace's remark had not been a call to violence, saying she could have been asking Crockett to go outside to, quote, have a cup of coffee or perhaps a beer, end quote. Obviously ridiculous. Everyone knows what Nancy Mace meant. She went on a Twitter rampage and is still rampaging about this incident that happened on Tuesday, as well as arguing about trans stuff and a bill that she wanted to put up about, quote unquote, saving women's sports. And so she's been on just a tear on X. Twitter is the real name, of course, about all this stuff. So yeah, go have at it if you want to, and see some of the silly things she's saying. But she keeps denying it's not what I meant. That's not what I meant. But everyone knows that's what you meant, Nancy. And it's okay. No one's clutching their pearls. It's not a big deal. Just, but don't lie about it. Don't insult our intelligence. Like, we know what you meant. You got mad, you spouted off, and you said that. Whatever. Just admit it. It's not a big deal. You're not going to get in trouble for it. So anyway, that all happened. Very bizarre reaction, but also expected at the same time. Also funny that she's, saying, hey, let's go outside as if to fight, when just a couple weeks ago she had her arm in a sling because someone shook her hand too hard, and she made a whole ordeal about that. I think I even saw on Twitter that she claims something like she's still going through physical therapy because of that. So that just adds another layer to it. So, needless to say, there's a lot of people giving their opinions on this on social media. And as Mace is wont to do, she seems to be responding to just about all of them. Truly a meltdown is happening with her again. So yeah, if you want some entertainment, you can go check out her both accounts. By the way, she has her representative account, on Twitter, and then she has her account that she had before she was a rep. So she has two, essentially like a personal and a work one. But she is furiously tweeting from both accounts multiple times, liking her own posts, retweeting her own posts. It is a nightmare. I don't know how she finds time to even attend these committee hearings. Maybe she's tweeting throughout them. I don't know. It's truly bizarre and just erratic behavior. So anyway, that's the latest with National Nancy, aka Cash Me Outside Nancy Mace. Another just truly sad and pathetic piece of news here. South Carolina Governor Henry McMaster has issued an executive order. He did this on Wednesday afternoon of this week, saying that the U.S. flags on Monday will be temporarily raised back to their normal position in honor of the inauguration of Donald Trump. Now, you may remember, or maybe not, President Joe Biden had ordered that U.S. flags be at half-mast after the death of former President Jimmy Carter. This is normal behavior. Anytime a president dies, the incumbent president, regardless of party, will order, flags lowered to half-mast as a sign of respect. And, the country is mourning the death of someone. And sometimes they order, presidents will do this after tragedies involving civilians and other, incidents as well. Not a big deal. This happens all the time. And I don't think anybody cares in the sense of how Donald Trump made it seem. because what happened is the order would mean that flags would be at half staff during inauguration day on Monday. Donald Trump decided that was not acceptable. On January 3rd, he posted on social media that Democrats are all giddy about the notion that flags will be lowered when he takes office as president. Side note, literally saw no one say anything about how happy they are flags are at half staff during Trump's inauguration, because it has nothing to do with him. It has to do with a former president who passed. I don't know anyone who was like, ha, yeah, it's real funny that this guy died and now flags are going to be at half staff for Trump. Take that. No one cares. But Donald Trump certainly did. He wrote, "Nobody wants to see this," and added that no American can be happy about it. Well, no, we're not happy that a president died, a former president died. But again, no one was thinking anything of it except for him. He just thought that this was going to make him look bad somehow. Everything's always about him. And so he had a little tantrum about it. No surprise, Speaker of the House Mike Johnson capitulated and said that flags will be raised to their normal height during the inauguration. Okay, whatever. It's silly. It's dumb that they are doing these things on the whim of a very immature person who needs everything to be about them. But okay, whatever. It's the inauguration. Fine. But Henry McMaster saying the same for the state is truly pathetic and sad. The inauguration isn't happening here. It's not going to be television cameras like there will be, and coverage, media coverage here in South Carolina, like there will be for the inauguration, where flags are going to be all over the place like they are at every inauguration. This state has nothing to do with it. And I don't even think Donald Trump. I mean, we don't know, but I doubt he contacted McMaster and told him to do this, which makes it even sadder that he just wants to bow down to this man. And so, yes, McMaster ordered that state flags that were lowered to half staff following the death of President Carter will now, on inauguration day, be raised back up. He ordered that the flags, specifically for the South Carolina state capitol and other state buildings, they'll be raised back to full staff at sunrise on Monday in recognition of Trump's inauguration. Again, just so sad and pathetic. The whole thing, Trump being upset about flags being at half mast, which have nothing to do with him, and nobody cared or were using it as a zinger on him. I don't think I saw any jokey comments about it until after Trump started complaining about it. And then you see people like, oh, they should be at half staff as the country's mourning the next 4 years, little jokes like that. I didn't see anything like that until Trump said something. So he just completely fabricated something. And as usual, everyone's afraid of him. And so they're bowing down to him, but just so sad and pathetic. And just it all is starting. Here we go. Speaking of presidents, I mentioned on the last podcast, President Joe Biden is coming to Charleston this Sunday. At the time, we didn't have any details about what he was doing, why he was coming here. We know a little bit more thanks to local reporting from the Post and Courier and others. Apparently, President Biden will visit Royal Missionary Baptist Church on Luella Avenue in North Charleston, which is considered the largest Black congregation in the country. Its history actually dates back to 1916. He is also expected to attend a reception at the International African American Museum on Sunday as well, before going back to D.C. And, obviously will be there on Monday for Trump's inauguration. So it appears it's almost like a thank you or a nod to South Carolina, because he won this state, the first in the South primary, as it was known at the time. Now it's the first in the country, but had won the primary in South Carolina, which got his 2020 campaign back on track, because he was trailing after other states had voted in the Democratic primary. And this kind of started his ascension to the nomination and ultimately getting elected. So it's kind of seen as a thank you to that. And also a nod to specifically the Black community here in South Carolina, who had a major hand in helping him win the primary in the state. So just a little bit more details about what he's doing for those interested. And so then now you'll know a little bit more about, if you're seeing traffic around those areas, or if you're planning on traveling around those areas, that you may see traffic depending on when he is coming through. So just a little update for you. And our last story, I've been meaning to talk about this for a while. Post and Courier did a great article where I'm getting this information from. But the U.S. Justice Department has accused 6 of the nation's landlord giants, including Charleston's Greystar, of engaging in a pricing scheme to keep rents high around the country. The companies were added on January 7th as defendants to a previously filed antitrust lawsuit. The government is alleging that these real estate firms directly communicated with each other and coordinated their leasing prices using an algorithm that assisted their efforts. In this complaint, the Justice Department is saying that the landlords sought to boost profits by sharing sensitive data on pricing and occupancy rates through emails, phone calls, or in groups. The information that was shared allegedly included renewal numbers, how often the companies accept the algorithm's recommendation, the use of free rent and other concessions, and their approach to pricing for the next quarter. So, in a nutshell, these companies are being accused of behind the scenes working together to make sure that rents stayed high so that no one would come in and undercut, basically saying, hey, if we all just keep our prices around the same, no one's giving a little bit less, so that they can take away customers from us. The demand is there, let's just keep prices high and we'll all make money. And that's basically what it is in a nutshell. Now, those are the accusations anyway. Greystar, the Charleston company, has declined a request for comment to the Post and Courier, but they did issue a statement that was dated on January 7th, vowing to, quote, vigorously defend itself. So a little bit more about Greystar. Here in South Carolina, they manage apartment complexes, not just in South Carolina, but specifically here in some pretty big markets. And where they operate here in South Carolina, rents have soared more than 30% since 2020. That's just 5 years. 30% their rates have increased. Now, the Post and Courier notes that prices have stabilized, but they certainly aren't dropping. The landlords were added to a case originally filed last year against a company called RealPage, which runs an apartment rental algorithm. Prosecutors have said that the technology uses sensitive competitive information and allows building owners to align prices and avoid competition that would otherwise push prices lower. Going back to Greystar, they manage about 38 apartment complexes in the Charleston area alone. Some of the more well-known ones are 10 West Edge, which is near the Citadel and the Charleston River Dog Stadium, where right now rents can range anywhere from $2,200 to just over $5,000. The company has also built the Guild, which opened in 2022 as part of the Courier Square development behind where the Post and Courier used to be, off of Upper King Street near Columbus Street. Base rents for that property range from 2,300 to 6,200. So, I don't think those numbers necessarily surprise any of you if you've looked into the prices before, but obviously those are not very cheap. The Justice Department said one of the landlords that it did not identify has agreed to cooperate with investigators. So that kind of signals that maybe one of those things where there's smoke, there's fire. Well, if one of the groups is like, "Hey, no, we'll partner with you, we'll help you out," basically flipping on the other landlords, probably to get themselves out of bigger trouble if this comes to pass that they did in fact do all these things. That's not a good sign for Greystar or the other companies. The proposed settlement would restrict how the company can use data from competitors and algorithms to set rents. So they would take away the methods that they've been using. So very interesting. I don't think altogether shocking, as everyone's talking about how unaffordable just day-to-day life can be, whether it's rents or groceries and things like that. Um, and although maybe people suspected it, we didn't have, there's no proof that these companies are working together, but the Justice Department thinks it has it. And we'll certainly see what happens. Could be a very big story depending how it plays out from here, and I'll be sure to keep you updated. And that'll do it for this edition of Holy City Center Radio. Have an awesome weekend. holycitycenter.com/calendar is a place to go to find events, not just for this weekend, but beyond as well. If you have a moment, please nominate Holy City Center in the Charleston City Paper's Best of Charleston 2025 Awards. There's a link in the show notes for that, as well as all the stories I talked about today. Another favor, if you don't mind, if you haven't already, please rate, review, like, subscribe, whatever you can do on the platform you're currently listening to. Please do that. It helps boost this show. Thank you to Lindsay Marie Collins with LMC Sound System for producing this and every episode of Holy City Center Radio. And a big thank you to Tyler Boone, whose music you hear in each and every show. Have a good weekend. Stay safe out there. Have fun. I will be back with you next week. Until then, good night and good luck.